Breaking news, debate rewrite underway as Kamala's campaign scrambles.
Keeping you informed and engaged, now more than ever. This is Seculo. We want to hear from you. Share and post your comments or call 1-800-684-3110. And now your host, Jordan Seculo.
Hey, welcome to Seculo. We are taking your calls too, 1-800-684-3110. Tulsi Gabbard is going to join us in the next segment of the broadcast. She is someone who's got direct experience debating Harris. And so she, of course, has seen Harris on the debate stage when Harris has had moments, positive moments going after Joe Biden, and when Tulsi herself kind of took down Harris, and I'd say ended the Harris campaign when Tulsi took it to Harris. And so, again, we're going to talk to her about that in the next segment of the broadcast, and also what to look for in tonight's debate, because she's been on those debate stages and specifically, as you know, has been there with Kamala Harris specifically and has seen her, go after people. She's also been in a back and forth with her that Tulsi definitely got the best of that exchange. So we're going to talk about that as well as kind of what to look for tonight. There's also some breaking news inside the debate, which is interesting, Will, is that Harris herself, we thought they wanted the mics on because they wanted the Donald Trump of the first debate versus Joe Biden. This is back in the last election cycle, so for the 2020 cycle, where you could constantly hear kind of Donald Trump rumbling, grumbling, or saying, that's wrong, that's a lie, because his mic was just on enough, so where it sounded like he was constantly cutting or trying to cut Joe Biden off. And in fact, it was Harris who wanted the mics on because she wanted to try and cut Donald Trump off and try and fact check him live, which again would have dangerously, I think, she may have gotten saved here actually, folks, because it would have made her look like she was trying to cut Donald Trump off when it was his time to talk.
That's right. And the American people do like a degree of decorum in these things. They want to see kind of a brawl on stage, but they also want it to not just be a complete chaotic mess where they can't understand what's going on. And Politico reported that the Harris advisors are scrambling to rewrite their playbook because they, even to the 11th hour, were trying to push for a rule change where mics would be left on the entire time. ABC declined to do that. They stayed with the agreed upon rules, but they're reporting the reason why they're scrambling to rewrite their strategy is because Kamala Harris planned to object, fact check, and directly question Donald Trump while he was speaking during the debate. So almost taking a playbook from President Trump in 2020, and honestly, that checks out because the Harris campaign has been taking playbook from Donald Trump this entire short campaign, whether it be the border wall, no taxes on tips. Now it looked like she was trying to mimic his debate strategy that was widely panned for President Trump in 2020 when he seemed aggressive, interrupting, and chaotic on the debate stage. I agree with you. I think the ABC may have saved the Harris campaign from themselves by keeping this rule in place.
We know that there will not be opening statements, that there will be a couple of commercials. There's no live audience like the first debate. Again, you have to remind yourself there was a first presidential debate, and that President Trump just did too well and delivered the death blow to Joe Biden's presidential campaign and re-election campaign. The microphones will remain muted when a candidate isn't speaking, so it's your turn not to talk, since we were talking about. The two candidates will have under 2 minutes to deliver closing statements. President Trump will go last. That was done by a coin flip. It was not because he's a former president or something like that. So that was just done by a coin flip. So there's the kind of basic setup. It's ABC News. It's David Muir and someone from ABC News. What's her name again?
Her name is Linsey Davis from
ABC
Live Prime.
Live Prime. So again, a lot of people know David Muir. I don't know if they know Linsey Davis. But remember, sometimes the host can become the focus of these debate as well, the debate host, depending on how they ask the questions and how they kind of treat the candidates on stage. So there's a lot of pressure on them. We're taking your calls. Tulsi Gabbard is joining us next on the broadcast to get into all the debate details. And, of course, support the work of the ACLJ. Become an ACLJ champion and make a monthly recurring gift now at aclj.org/champions.
Just hours from now, the first and maybe only presidential debate between Vice President Harris and former President Trump.
Tonight's debate will be consequential. Their best opportunity to make their case directly to voters before early voting kicks off in a matter of days. It was just 7 weeks ago that the race was upended when President Biden dropped out after his disastrous debate performance.
When these two candidates enter this room, it will be their very first time coming face to face. This room is quite intimate. There will be no studio audience to cheer them on, no campaign staff allowed in this room. Their microphones will only be turned on when it is their turn to speak. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question, so they'll be paying very close attention to this clock right here.
Harris and her team are focusing on ways to try to needle Trump, to provoke him.
The vice president arriving in Philadelphia after hunkering down for days, intensely preparing in Pittsburgh. Her team even building a stage with full TV lighting to hold mock debates.
Sparring with former Hillary Clinton aide Philippe Reines, who is standing in as Trump and even dressing like him.
Less formal debate prep for the former president. Among those advising him, former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who tangled with Harris in a primary debate 5 years ago. Among Trump's priorities to tie Harris to Biden, and with the polls still neck and neck, tonight poses what could be the last major shakeup in this race.
There are very real issues and challenges that are happening today directly because of Kamala Harris and her record. And that's the seriousness with which they are treating this debate, to actually learn the truth about Kamala Harris. President Trump knows her record. He obviously has a record of success that he can stand on. And he's going to challenge Kamala Harris on exactly that and keep reminding voters who she really is, not the actor that she will present herself to be tomorrow night.
Welcome back to Secular. We are taking your calls to 1-800-684-3110. That's 1-800-684-3110. Tulsi Gabbard is joining us now. And Tulsi, of course, has got debate experience with Harris, as well as doing debate prep, some prep, and some passing on some knowledge to President Trump as well. Tulsi, at first, just kind of what you think the ACLJ audience and the audience of the Secular broadcast should be looking out for tonight. This is an audience that is likely going to be tuning in. They're going to stick with it. They know the issues, but they're also kind of looking for the quirks that they should be looking out for tonight. What do you think?
I think it's important to look at the premise of this debate. You know, AVC is going to try to create this as many political, theatric, dramatic moments as possible in this debate. We've looked at the research of the two ABC moderators. We know that they're going to be extremely biased against Donald Trump and be helping Kamala Harris. The comments that they've made their bias known very publicly. I think as we're watching this debate tonight, we'll be able to notice the difference in the approach that both of these candidates have taken. I'll use myself as an example. First of all, I am by no means a practiced or experienced or expert debater. I was never in debate club in high school. I hadn't had any training. My debates in the presidential election were really the most debates I had ever had in my entire life. But my exchange with Kamala Harris was very simple. It was just based on calling her out on her hypocrisy with regard to what she says, contrasting with her actions and the record that she claims to be proud of. So tonight, what we'll see in this debate is Kamala Harris, who has spent the last week locked up in her hotel room in Pittsburgh, taking acting classes, having acting coaches, having a room that's set up like a TV set with lights and a stage with a stand-in actor playing Donald Trump. She is training for the performance of her lifetime, and that's exactly what it is. Contrast that with Donald Trump, and I've been spending quite a bit of time with him over these last few weeks. Donald Trump is Donald Trump. You may not like the way he says things. You may really love the way he says things, but you'll see Donald Trump tonight on the debate stage in the same way that you see him at a rally or in any one of the 34-plus interviews that he's done. To Kamala's one interview, he will speak his mind. He will talk about his record versus Kamala Harris's record. She's the incumbent in this race. And he's going to talk about how the future that he will bring about really is centered around fixing what Kamala Harris and Joe Biden has broken and getting our country back to a country where we can live and thrive in a free and peaceful and prosperous society.
Yeah, we are going to play for people in the next segment, Tulsi, kind of your moments with Harris and also Harris moments with Biden, because it was first came those moments, and that's when Harris got some attention, and then you kind of took down most of that attention from her, and her presidential campaign floundered from that point on. But we've kind of seen her get to the top again without having to get any votes. The interesting part is, yes, you talk about the difference in debate prep and the styles. People are pretty used to Donald Trump now. I think even people who are not sure if they again, who they're going to vote for, they know who Donald Trump is kind of going to be like tonight. And I think if he's the Donald Trump that was similar to who took on Joe Biden, and listen, Harris is not going to be exactly like Joe Biden, like he was struggling throughout the entire night. But there were moments when Trump stepped in and said, let's stop acting like children, and really took it back to serious points. So if you're trying to talk about, these kind of, needling kind of moments that don't matter, he stepped in a couple of those last time President Trump did and stopped the debate over that. And I think a lot of people actually noticed that and said, well, this guy is actually more serious than sometimes you may think. So I do think you look out for moments like this. A lot of people are building this up as the most important debate since the last debate. What do you think, Tulsi?
Well, unfortunately, this may be the only debate since President Trump debated President Biden, which, quite frankly, when we look throughout history and the effectiveness of debates, Joe Biden dropped out of the race because of President Trump and how that debate went. So the stakes are high with this debate because it may be the only time that voters get to see Donald Trump and Kamala Harris side by side. Now, it's important to point out that, and President Trump said the other day at a rally, he said, hey, even if I do great at this debate, the mainstream propaganda media is going to say that he was a disaster. And Kamala Harris had the debate performance of her life. So the outcome is somewhat rigged. But really what Kamala Harris is planning for, and she should not be underestimated, she's gone in and done a lot of preparation for this. According to her own team, she will put out a performance where she will present to voters what she wants them to see. What we as voters and viewers need to remember as she is delivering an acting performance is that it is just that. She is trying to create this vision for us of something that's not true and is actually diametrically opposed to her radical, extreme record and the positions that she has, what she really believes, and frankly, what she will actually do as president. I think it's very telling when CNN now over the last couple of days have issued two separate stories that have been quite scathing on Kamala Harris, not because they're being extra critical. They're just saying, here's her record. And the story that came out yesterday was finding that in an ACLU survey that she completed in 2019 when she was running for president, is that she wants us as taxpayers to fund transgender sex change surgeries for illegal immigrants in detention in our country. It said many other things that were quite disturbing in that questionnaire, but there's a lot of truth that voters are not aware of yet about who Kamala Harris is and how dangerous she will be if she is elected as president. I'm looking forward to hearing how President Trump keeps reminding voters over and over and over again about Kamala Harris's record, because that's really where the truth lies.
Yeah, I would think too, Tulsi. I mean, listen, Harris has a lower bar than Trump. I think he's correct in the sense that if the media can do it with a straight face, they will always come out and say the person on the left, the far left, like Harris, won the debate. Now, we saw there are times when it's so bad, like the Biden debate, that they can't do that. But I think expecting that to happen tonight, again, you can't expect that to happen every single debate cycle. And so I think for Trump supporters to also, and those who are watching this debate kind of in the middle right now, not sure who to vote for, is you have to put that aside a little bit, because you don't see many debates where even the mainstream media, like we did that night, really threw their hands up in the air and said, yeah, Donald Trump, destroyed Joe Biden.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, he was so dominant even just by being very focused, very disciplined, very direct, staying focused on the issues, his record versus Joe Biden's record. This was why the tide completely changed and why Joe Biden is no longer the Democratic candidate for president. So I think the dynamic is going to be very different tonight, given it's Kamala Harris. She's shown, and I've watched a lot of her debate tape from her debates in the past, not only for 2019. She had some very effective lines there, even against Joe Biden when she called him a racist. But in her U.S. Senate races, her races for Attorney General, District Attorney, she can deliver well-rehearsed lines very effectively. It's what she did as a prosecutor for her entire career in a courtroom. So this is what she is leaning in on is her experience in rehearsing lines that are scripted for her to achieve the effect that she desires, which is to try to get voters to forget and ignore the disastrous record that she has had over the last 3.5 years. And frankly, what Donald Trump keeps saying over and over and over again. If Kamala Harris wants a new way forward, why did she wait 3.5 years for that? It's going to be hard for her to run away from that record, especially when she tied herself so closely to Joe Biden. She's the last person in the room when he makes big decisions, celebrating Bidenomics, the most tie-breaking votes in the U.S. Senate in history to implement Joe Biden's and Kamala Harris's policies, celebrating the quote-unquote Inflation Reduction Act that actually made inflation skyrocket. And you've had the White House just this past week with their spokesperson saying that basically there is Kamala Harris was deeply integrated and a part of every single decision that was made in the Biden-Harris administration. It's going to be tough for her to run away from that.
We only have about a minute, Tulsi, but this one's got to be interesting for you. The fact that Harris and the Democrat Party are touting an endorsement from Dick Cheney. We got 40 seconds here. Just your reaction to that quickly.
For Dick Cheney, who is the cause of the deaths and injuries of countless numbers of my brothers and sisters in uniform and many, many more lives. He is responsible for the disasters that we continue to see in the Middle East and in Europe and different parts of the world. Remember that. Kamala Harris equals Dick Cheney. We cannot afford that.
I mean, it's true right there. It is bizarre to see. This is someone I worked on the Bush-Cheney campaign, re-elect campaign. I never thought I'd see the day. Looking back at all the errors as well, that they'd be so proud that they'd put forward an endorsement like that. Shocking. Tulsi, thanks for joining us. Support the work of the ACLJ at aclj.org, folks. We'll be right back.
Senator Bernie Sanders was on Meet the Press, speaking of NBC and Comcast, and Kristen Welker asked him about the flip-flops that we've seen from Kamala Harris. You know, she used to be more in line with the things you supported, but now she's changed on these issues. And Senator Sanders, to his credit, said the quiet part out loud. He said that, I don't think she's abandoning her ideals. I think she's trying to be pragmatic and doing what she thinks is right in order to win an election. Did he tell us 100% what we would see from a Harris administration? It would be the way she had ruled in California as Attorney General, the way that she voted as a senator.
Well, she's not changing her values. Let's remember that. And her values are very well known. We've seen them on video. What's happening right now is the Kamala Harris team and Kamala Harris herself have been caught because they always assumed that the California playbook would be the way that you win the White House. They were so naive to think that what worked in Sacramento was somehow going to work in Washington, D.C. And let me just tell you, as a Californian, they've ruined this state with their woke ideologies. She's on video saying you got to be more woke. You should always be woke. And we have seen firsthand in California that woke policies are atrocious. What they're trying to do is win an election. So she's saying things like, I'm not against fracking because she's got to win Pennsylvania. This is a clear indication that they're panicking and that their strategy to run as a woke, radical San Francisco progressive is not working. Everyone knew it wasn't going to work. Kamala is the last one to know that it wasn't going to work.
All right, welcome back to Secular. We'll get to your calls, too, at 1-800-684-3110 on how the Harris team, I mean, you heard it from Tulsi, and you've seen it in the reports. I mean, she's practicing for the night of her life. I mean, this is like the most important performance of her life, and they're treating it that way, where she's in a mock TV studio with a mock Donald Trump that she's been debating against, and a lot of prepared lines. So you're going to see a Harris who is, again, much of what she is going to say is going to be already something that she has memorized and prepared to say on various issues, where you say, okay, if you get asked this question, you're going to talk about this. You get asked this. And listen, this is what I said. She's a seasoned politician. With that kind of prep time, don't write her off as the Harris that you see in these kind of goofy live moments that don't have that kind of prep time. Because we're going to kind of play a couple of different bites for you to see as a reminder about Harris when she ran for president. The first is with our colleague, Tulsi Gabbard. So this is when Tulsi really became a name for herself on the national stage. And I think a lot of conservatives actually took notice of what Tulsi was saying, and libertarians especially took notice of Tulsi and her independence within the party, and the Democrat Party came after her after this. But this is when she basically took down Kamala Harris in the debates. Remember, Harris did not make it to any votes in this first attempt at running for president. She ended up being the VP nominee. But for those of you watching, you can watch it. For those of you listening, take a listen. This goes back to the debates in 2015.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
All right. So, I mean, you saw right there, Will, that was, again, 2019. Harris never really recovered from that.
No.
Now, she ultimately get picked as VP. That's a different calculation. How you did the debate is not usually how they calculate that. Joe Biden, he needed someone different, young, effective as a VP candidate. She has not, interestingly enough, thrived as a vice president. I mean, let's just say she is not. It's kind of like she stumbled into this. It feels like it.
Well, and when you look at that type of bite where she is presented with her record, that's where she doesn't perform well. But she has very good time on the debate stage when she can rehearse, and that's why she's see you. Exactly, because she was a prosecutor, and many times as a prosecutor you have a very well rehearsed presentation in front of a jury because you are trying to convince them that your standard of evidence meets that bar of beyond a reasonable doubt. So you have to think, you've heard about them like camping out in this hotel preparing. You've had Philippe Rines, who's a name that I never thought I'd have to hear again after the Clintons were done, but he has been dressing up as Trump. You have to imagine that, ABC is showing the studio now. Have they been moving furniture around to try to make it look exactly right for her so that she can present exactly as it's going to be? But when she has a rehearsed line, this is what was kind of dangerous from Kamala Harris, because this actually really damaged Joe Biden very early on.
Got on the Biden VP list is that she was not a very good presidential candidate yet because she wasn't good at taking the incoming, but she was good at delivering shots. And that's kind of what you want your vice president to be. They don't have to be the most dynamic person in the world, but if they can deliver kill shots for you, politically speaking, that can be a very effective person. Now, when she actually got into office, she has not lived up to that example about what you're going to see right now. This is, again, in the debates, earlier in the debates, when Harris takes on Joe Biden directly. Let's watch.
And I will say also that in this campaign, we've also heard, and I'm going to now direct this at Vice President Biden, I do not believe you are a racist. And I agree with you when you commit yourself to the importance of finding common ground. But I also believe, and it's personal, and I was actually it was hurtful to hear you talk about the reputations of two United States senators who built their reputations and career on the segregation of race in this country. And it was not only that, but you also worked with them to oppose busing. And, you know, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. So I will tell you that on this subject, it cannot be an intellectual debate among Democrats. We have to take it seriously. We have to act swiftly. As Attorney General of California, I was very proud to put in place a requirement that all my special agents would wear body cameras and keep those cameras on.
Senator Harris, thank you. Vice President Biden, you have been invoked. We are going to give you a chance to respond. Vice President Biden.
Mischaracterization of my position across the board. I did not praise racist. That is not true. Number one. Number two, if we want to have this campaign litigated on who supports civil rights and whether I did or not, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, I mean, again, first of all, for those of you watching, how different in 4 years Joe Biden looks. I mean, it's almost amazing that's what we're talking about. That was just in 2015, and he did make it to the re-election cycle. Very different looking. But second, I mean, that shows you right there when she decided, I'm going to target Joe Biden tonight. Yep. I'm going to try and deliver. It might not be a kill shot because Joe Biden was very powerful. He's coming out of being a vice president for Barack Obama. We had 4 years of Trump at that point, and so he had stayed in the national spotlight, very popular with the DNC, and it was kind of like his turn to get the nomination. He had run 3 times for president. But it does show that when she can kind of focus in on one person, she gets to do that tonight, Will. You can deliver lines that you better be ready with a response better than what Joe Biden had there. He got away with it there because he was still the strongest candidate at that point, and she had already had she was kind of an upstart from the beginning. She ended up being the VP nominee, so they saw, wow, this person can be tough. They can deliver some tough info. Where has that Harris been the last 4 years, and does she show up tonight? Because if she shows up like that tonight, this is a different race.
That's right. And you even saw, if you were watching on YouTube, the head snap by Joe Biden when she delivered that line of, and that little girl was me. It was a very profound moment in politics. If you look at this from a debate performance, her being able to get that visible reaction from the other candidate, who was the leading candidate and ended up being the president, was a very powerful moment. It was obviously delivered to a Democrat base. It was a primary. But if you can elicit that kind of response out of another candidate, that's scoring points on the debate stage. And if she's able to deliver something like that, and there's a visible response by Donald Trump in that manner that catches you off guard and you understand that, it could be a kind of a trap moment on the debate stage.
As the election nears and the attacks from the left increase, we need your help now more than ever at the ACLJ. If you can, donate online at aclj.org. And please keep us in the fight month after month for those ACLJ champions. If you are not yet a champion, you can become one at aclj.org/champions and donate today. Right back. Some people think champions are bored, that it's a title that requires something only a handful can ever possess.
There are times in our lives that we are called, every one of us, to step up and serve a cause greater than ourselves.
Even when the loudest voices in the room say it's wrong, that it can't be done. It can be a difficult stand, but it's one any of us can make, including you.
You can be the change. You can make that difference.
You can be a champion. We cannot do what we do without you.
By becoming a monthly donor, you can become a champion of life.
A champion of liberty, a champion of freedom.
Please join us. Become an ACLJ champion today.
keeping you informed and engaged. Now more than ever. This is Seculo. And now your host, Jordan Seculo.
All right, folks, welcome back to Seculo. We are taking your calls, too, and there are a lot of calls. 1-800-684-3110. We asked you, of course, if you're watching the debate tonight, what are you going to be watching for? Your questions on the debate. Of course, we'll have full reaction on tomorrow's broadcast. The debate, by the way, ABC, but also carried on whatever station you like to tune in on. No audience. It starts at 9 p.m. Eastern time. It's about an hour and a half with 2 commercial breaks. Donald Trump will give the closing statement. That was by coin flip, so he'll be the last person that talks. There are no opening statements, so it goes right into questions when the debate begins at 9 p.m. Eastern time tonight in the Constitution Hall in Philadelphia. Again, no audience. Microphones cut off when you're not speaking, so very similar to the last debate, except for Joe Biden was taken out by President Trump in that debate, and that setting proved to be very good for President Trump. That was CNN. Will ABC try to be more liberal, try to be less, I'd say, fair than CNN, which actually I think that night was trying to be fair, was trying to be open, but Joe Biden was just so bad that it didn't matter what you tried to do to even kind of help him get across his basic response or message. It was a very rough night. As we'll kind of show some of that to people, too, to remind them why we got to this point, how these debates can have serious consequences. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes, and in the past, you get 3 of these, plus a VP debate. And so, the most important debate probably for Donald Trump and Joe Biden was the first debate where Donald Trump just kept cutting him off too much and didn't come across well on television. And that was because the mics weren't live and on, and Joe Biden was able to utilize that by just kind of like being there and being like, come on, man, like you won't even, he probably said that 100 times, but that's because he wouldn't let, Donald Trump was like not letting him talk. And if you look like you're kind of butting in like that, that can't happen tonight because your microphone is off when you don't have the question posed to you. I do want to go to the calls, though, Will. We got them coming in at 1-800. We got a full bank of calls at 1-800-684-3110. So keep calling us. We want to get your thoughts.
That's right. We're going to go to Bill calling from Wyoming on line 1. Bill, you're on Seculo.
Hi. Thanks for taking my call. I've got a question. Couldn't Trump push back on Kamala Harris's and say, Kamala, you say you have not left your values. Well, guess what? Neither have I. Couldn't he use that?
I think. Listen, if you're going to do that, you need to walk through the issues where Harris has changed. Like, how has she not changed her values when, on the one hand, she was calling Donald Trump's wall and the issue of illegal immigration a distraction issue, Will, just a few years ago, and now she's running ads with Trump's border wall in it.
Honestly, I think the President Trump should also just remind everyone what Senator Bernie Sanders said on Meet the Press this weekend. To hammer down that point, here's what Bernie Sanders said talking with Kristen Welker on Meet the Press.
She has previously supported Medicare for all. Now she does not. She's previously supported a ban on fracking. Now she does not. These, Senator, are ideas that you have campaigned on. Do you think that she is abandoning her progressive ideals?
No, I don't think she's abandoning her ideals. I think she's trying to be pragmatic and doing what she thinks is right in order to win the election.
Saying the quiet part out loud. Right
just lie. Just lie to the American people. Tell people that you've had full policy changes to try and win an election. Tough. What's tough about that is if she comes out tonight and says, look, no, this is my position. I might have had other positions in the past. This is my position. If you don't say, basically, if you don't have someone saying that, and it really is only effective when it's from inside their own party. Donald Trump can say that over and over again. I think where you have to show is who is the real Harris. And it's not just talking points. It's how she's voted. It's the legislation she supported. It's the ads that she's allowed run on her behalf. And it's her record. And you got to hit that and then really talk to people about what you want to do for the country moving forward. How is Donald Trump going to build on what Donald Trump did in years past, but now dealing with 2025? What is Donald Trump going to do in 2025? We will continue to take more of your phone calls. 1-800-684-3110. Support the work of the ACLJ. We've got lawsuits, of course, to defend our friend Tulsi Gabbard, our colleague. So go to aclj.org to support our work and donate financially if you can at aclj.org.
Now to the new jobs report, which could have a big impact on the Fed's decision on interest rates.
This jobs report fell short of expectations and confirms once again that this labor market is weakening. 142,000 jobs were added in August.
Today's number for non-farm payrolls isn't really 142,000, which was lighter than expected. It's 142,000 minus the 86,000 downward revision, which means only 86,000 new corporate payroll jobs.
What do you make of some of the data points we're hearing that all of the job gains are going to foreign-born workers, none of them to native-born Americans?
This is part of a broader, longer trend where native-born Americans have made literally no progress in terms of employment in the last 5 years. In other words, there are fewer native-born Americans employed today than before the pandemic. All of the job gains on net have gone to foreign-born workers. And by the way, the BLS admits on their website that that category includes an unknown number of illegal aliens.
And, you know, when you dig in and look at job composition, for example, over the past year, we have literally lost full-time jobs. They've been replaced by part-time jobs. So this economy, on paper, it may look spectacular. There is a lot underneath the hood.
Unfortunately, it means the consumer is going to continue to be extremely strapped going forward because they are losing their full-time jobs and having to replace them with at least one, but typically more than one, part-time jobs. And sadly, this last month is not simply an isolated incident. It's part of a broader, longer trend where we have been losing these full-time jobs, over 1 million in the last year, and replacing them entirely with part-time ones. So again, it's not a good sign. And by the way, it's also a very common practice for businesses to do this, to shift away from full-time employment and towards part-time employment as we head into a recession.
Right. Front and center tonight, likely in the debate. If the moderators are being honest about what is concerning to most Americans, it is the economy. It's inflation. It's these issues of, will I be better off in these next 4 years because Donald Trump is president, or will I be better off if Kamala Harris is president? And what has it been like under the 4 years Kamala Harris has been vice president? And there's an interesting report that came out Friday. It hasn't gotten as much attention because there's been a countdown to the debate, I think, since midweek last week, and then there was a countdown to Donald Trump's sentencing. Then that got pushed back as well. So again, you see the refocusing on a lot of the theatrics around the debates, the prep that Harris has done. I think the one thing where she's gotten out ahead of people is that when you know that she's taken a week to do all this debate prep, and you know that they've built a stage and they put the lights in place, and she's got a Donald Trump, someone playing Donald Trump, dressed up like Donald Trump to prepare for tonight, she's going to be very prepared to deliver one-liners and tough statements that she hopes are kind of the things you remember. Or, as for most people who will not watch an hour and a half of this debate from 9 to 10:30 at night Eastern time, it will be what the press shows. So it'll be the sound bites that the press picks up on, and that she's got a number of these ready to go that she's memorized, which is why she would spend a week kind of behind closed doors doing this kind of serious debate prep. We know Donald Trump does not prep that way. But I do think on the economy, there's going to be real issues that come up. For instance, I want to go to Harry Hutchinson, our director of policy, because Harry, in July, we got another employment numbers out of the federal government, and it was an interesting number. I want you to break it down for people, because in July, employment for native-born workers fell by 1.3 million. So there are 1.3 million less native-born American workers inside being employed in the U.S. economy. Interestingly, employment for foreign-born workers, that could include, again, people who are American citizens now but were not born in the United States. That can be people with green cards. It can also include, it does also include those who are here illegally. That actually rose by 635,000. So the foreign-born workers are adding jobs, while native-born work, and that includes illegal immigrants, and native-born workers are losing jobs in the United States.
Precisely. But the picture is actually even worse, in part because the composition of the workforce increasingly favors part-time work, which does not favor native-born workers who need a full-time job to take care of their families. So you're precisely correct. In July, employment for native-born workers fell by 1.3 million, whereas employment for foreign-born workers rose by 635,000 to a total of 31.6 million. Also, as some of the commentators have pointed out, as the composition of jobs increasingly favors part-time as opposed to full-time work, this may forecast a recession. But let me also point out that the Biden-Harris administration has revised its job numbers down year over year by almost 1 million. So first off, no one should fully trust the numbers issued by the Biden-Harris administration. And I think the Biden-Harris administration doesn't understand economics. So, for instance, Kamala Harris has attacked Donald Trump for his proposed tariff on foreign imports as a way of protecting American jobs. Kamala Harris claims that this will lead to inflation. Well, the reality is precisely the opposite. Inflation actually fell during the Trump administration. Basically, the Trump administration's maximum inflation rate was around 2%, whereas the maximum inflation rate in the Biden-Harris term was about 9%. And one of the other things to keep in mind is while Trump was president, real wages rose by 15%. So we had a robust job market and we had real wages which were keeping up with inflation. So part of the picture with respect to foreign-born workers taking American jobs is that prevents American workers from getting a wage increase that will offset inflation. And I think at the end of the day, that is part of a deliberate strategy by the by the Biden-Harris regime.
Harry, when you look at the newly released issues section on Kamala Harris's website, which when some tech-savvy folks looked at the source code for it, found that most of it was copied and pasted from Joe Biden's previous website. So it is curious why it took them so long to get this section up on her website. But she does attack President Trump under the build an opportunity economy and lower costs for families. She mentions that Donald Trump's plan is to jack up prices through what you mentioned earlier, but it also says that Trump's economic plans would trigger a recession by mid-2025, so just a few months into office, and cost America over 3 million jobs. One, putting aside that they don't understand the economic cycle and that for a recession to be triggered by mid-2025, most of that would be her own policies coming to fruition. But when you also look at the fact they're claiming that it would cost Americans over 3 million jobs. When you look at just the revisions to last year's numbers of being 800,000 lower than they claimed, and then you add in the falling for native-born workers by 1.3 million of just last month, in July, the July numbers rather, you're looking at 2/3 of that 3 million that she's saying that Donald Trump will cost. How are they, with a straight face, able to make these economic claims when the reality on paper from the Department of Labor is telling the story that we are hemorrhaging American jobs under their leadership?
Well, first, the Kamala Walz team has hired brilliant fiction writers who basically are prepared to make up things out of whole cloth. The reality is, if you are concerned about job losses, you should be concerned about Kamala Harris's economic policies. Keep in mind, she cast the deciding vote for the Inflation Reduction Act, which led to massive inflation in the United States. and which diminish the real incomes of the American people. So she has indeed a record. You can compare and contrast her record with the Donald Trump administration's record. And guess what? We had a robust economy, real wages were rising, and employment was growing. And in fact, unemployment fell by a huge amount, the most in 50 years, down to about 3.5% during the Trump administration. Now, keep in mind, there has been some growth during the Biden-Harris administration, but their policies right now, as they begin to affect the economy, lead almost inevitably toward a recession. And if she is elected, given her tax and spend policies, we are likely to see a fairly deep recession going forward.
You know, folks, I think, again, we're going to continue to take your phone calls in the next segment of the broadcast at 1-800-684-3110. All of this needs to be brought up in the debate tonight. I mean, we were talking serious issues about the recession, serious issues about U.S. workers, and about how you phrase U.S. workers. You could see how Harris can use these numbers. And if you don't go into the numbers specifically, you can act like, oh, the economy's doing great. See, we're adding all these jobs. But then what about jobs for, and I could see how she tries to even turn, if Donald Trump was to say, native-born Americans, that somehow that's a bad thing to say. But then when you talk about foreign-born workers, you're not just talking about people who have got green cards or people who are here who have become U.S. citizens. You are also that the number of illegal immigrants working is thrown into that. So it makes it, again, I think even that much more difficult for Trump and others to kind of get these numbers across, and easier for Harris. But you got to stick with it. You've got to explain it to the American people, which is what we just did in this segment of the broadcast. And we thought it was important enough today, with the economy as it's such a top issue tonight, to make sure you understood these numbers before you hear them battered around tonight. We also want you to support the work of the ACLJ. You know, the deep state has weaponized our legal system against our colleague, Tulsi Gabbard, Lieutenant Colonel Tulsi Gabbard. We have got to fight back, folks, and we are. We're preparing our fourth round of FOIAs to get to the bottom of this and defend Tulsi. We're preparing lawsuits to defend your rights and protect your freedoms. We need you to support the work of the ACLJ by donating to the ACLJ. And if you can, become an ACLJ champion, a recurring monthly donor. I encourage you to do that at aclj.org. We're back to take your calls.
Just hours from now, the first and maybe only presidential debate between Vice President Harris and former President Trump.
Tonight's debate will be consequential. Their best opportunity to make their case directly to voters before early voting kicks off in a matter of days. It was just 7 weeks ago that the race was upended when President Biden dropped out after his disastrous debate performance.
When these two candidates enter this room, it will be their very first time coming face to face. This room is quite intimate. There will be no studio audience to cheer them on, no campaign staff allowed in this room. Their microphones will only be turned on when it is their turn to speak. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer each question, so they'll be paying very close attention to this clock right here.
Harris and her team are focusing on ways to try to needle Trump, to provoke him.
The vice president arriving in Philadelphia after hunkering down for days, intensely preparing in Pittsburgh. Her team even building a stage with full TV lighting to hold mock debates.
Sparring with former Hillary Clinton aide Philippe Reines, who is standing in as Trump and even dressing like him.
Less formal debate prep for the former president. Among those advising him, former Democratic Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, who tangled with Harris in a primary debate 5 years ago. Among Trump's priorities, to tie Harris to Biden, and with the polls still neck and neck, tonight poses what could be the last major shakeup in this race.
There are very real issues and challenges that are happening today directly because of Kamala Harris and her record. And that's the seriousness with which they are treating this debate, to actually learn the truth about Kamala Harris. President Trump knows her record. He obviously has a record of success that he can stand on. And he's going to challenge Kamala Harris on exactly that and keep reminding voters who she really is not the actor that she will present herself to be tomorrow night.
All right, welcome back to Secular. We said we take your calls, 1-800-684-3110 on the debate. Tonight, we're going to do just that, Will.
That's right. We're going to go to Court calling in Virginia on line 3. Court, welcome to Secular. You're on the air.
Thank you very much. So last week I saw a report that there would be an audience, but it would just be reporters alone. If that's true, are they going to have cameras on the reporters to see whether or not people are giving head nods or thumbs up or any sort of hints to Kamala?
So Will, last time the reporters wanted in the room, they weren't.
That's right.
Is the White House press corps going to be in the room tonight?
I have not
We've
seen
been told
any
no
confirmation
audience.
of that.
They said it was going to be exactly like last time. Exactly like last time, there was no reporters in the room.
That's right. Yeah, the reports are that there will be no live audience. And when you look at the room, ABC
small.
has been showing the studio
at least
where
looks
they're
very
doing
small.
it. It doesn't look like there'd even be room for any sort of gallery at all, even a handful of reporters from the press pool. They may have side stage or a viewing room or something like that, which they did have in Atlanta for the first one. It was across the street in another facility where reporters could watch the debate live and be together, I guess, as comrades in arms in the good fight of the Fourth Estate. But we look at the studio, and it does not appear that there is any room for anyone inside there except for the moderators, the camera crew, and, of course, the two candidates that will be joining each other on stage in this debate tonight. We're going to go on to our next call. We've got Carol calling from Ohio. Carol, you're on Seculo.
Yes, suburbia land. Thank you. I know 4 people out here in Ohio that are voting for Kamala's socialism because of this major issue of abortion. And I feel Trump needs to adamantly expose this late-term abortion business and organ harvesting business, because that's all that the election is about for them. And they're voting for her because of that.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we know that there is a significant vote, Will, that has been, and we've seen it in states that are not, including the purple states and even in some red states, where the pro-abortion message, it's why we're combating it in Massachusetts, even with how their attack on pro-life pregnancy centers and the pregnancy resource centers, and they've gone after them. We filed back with lawsuits. We filed back with also supporting pregnancy center, another bus to get on these again, because to combat these abortion buses that we've seen. They've done a very effective job. If that's your single issue, the abortion, and I'm sure it will come up tonight. I don't know how much time will be spent, because they feel like if you're voting on abortion, Harris has got your vote, and that includes, by the way, a redefinition of abortion. Donald Trump, if he can get into it a little bit tonight, he has been much clearer on IVF. He's been much clearer on federal versus state bans, and I think it would not hurt him to make those positions known tonight to combat Harris a little bit on that, because they think if they can get a lot of the suburban female vote by just saying, Donald Trump wants to take away your right to birth control.
And Carol, I would encourage you, if you talk to individuals that is the issue, remind them that Kamala Harris isn't for choice. The ACLJ has taken on Kamala Harris when she was the Attorney General of California, because she wanted there to be no choice. She wanted pro-life pregnancy resource centers that women turn to when they need help, they need support in a pregnancy, whether that be an unexpected pregnancy or if they just don't know what to do, or even if their means and income don't have them in a place where they have as many options as they feel like they need to. These are centers that are there, that are pro-life, that are there to support women in their time of need. Kamala Harris and the state of California tried to force these pregnancy resource centers to advertise for abortion, to post a sign. It was dictated in the law, the size of the sign, the font, what it had to say on it, to tell women that went into a pregnancy resource center where to go get an abortion and to declare, we do not provide it. Here is where you can go. That is the only choice that they want women to make when they find themselves pregnant in maybe an unexpected situation. They don't want choice. They want one choice. The correct choice for them is abortion. That's why they redefined abortion to even include things like miscarriage, as we saw on the stage at the DNC just last month. So remind people of that. Even if they are more moderate on the issue of abortion, that there is nothing moderate about the DNC's platform on that issue. It is only one choice. It is not choice at all. It is abortion or nothing. So let's continue on with the calls. Let's go to Rebecca calling in New Hampshire on line 6. Rebecca, you're on Seculo.
Hello. I'm hoping that Donald Trump will say things that are fresh and new. I do love listening to him in his rallies, but I just think it would be good for the nation to hear new words from him to explain, what he's trying to convey.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think you saw that style come out in the first debate with Joe Biden, Will. Is that there was a point when he stepped in and said, Joe Biden was talking about like his handicap and hitting the golf ball, and it was like, he was like, we got to stop doing it. It's like two old men.
He said, let's not be children.
Yeah, let's not be children. That was a moment for Donald Trump. The moment when he said, I don't have any idea what he said, and I don't think he did either. And everybody said, he's right. So you can be very tough and mean without being a jerk.
Right.
And I think that's what probably people are saying is be tough, be combative, needle Harris, but do it in a way that doesn't just sound like you're being petty. And I think if you sound petty and you come across like Donald Trump in the first debate with Joe Biden in the last election cycle, you can do a lot of damage to your campaign, especially if she comes out tonight very ready to go on the issues. Look, there's also a danger, though, she has of looking extremely robotic, Will. If you have memorized everything you're going to say and to every single question you might get, that's fine, but you can look real fake and kind of not sincere.
As soon as the reverse is flipped back on you, there's a follow-up. Let's go to Susan in Kentucky. Last call of the day. Susan, you're on Seculo.
Hello. I was just wondering, why is it that the Democratic Party was allowed to install a candidate without letting the American public vote for her?
Well, I mean, listen, they were able to pick one other person. So they weren't allowed to pick whoever they wanted. I think that's important to point out. They had to choose someone who, could inherit the hard dollars raised by Joe Biden. Okay, there was only one person who could do that, Harris. Now, if it happened a year before, Joe Biden could have donated some of that money out, but that $300 or so million that's put together with $5,000 donations or less, that's called hard dollars. Those are the toughest dollars to raise. She's the only person as the VP nominee that could inherit those dollars under campaign finance law without basically having to restart a fundraising campaign. So she was the only option. So Democrats chose that Joe Biden did so bad it was performing. And look at how different he looked. If you were with our show earlier in the broadcast and you saw the Joe Biden who was debating in 2015, you have to realize this is not the same person. This is not. So, and they realized that. And they were willing to go with Harris. She was the only person who could inherit those dollars. We're going to have full reaction for you tomorrow on Seculo. Remember, we are fighting back against the deep state, weaponizing our legal system against our colleague, Tulsi Gabbard, against Donald Trump. We're preparing to defend your rights and your constitutional freedoms. Support our work and donate today at aclj.org. We'll talk to you tomorrow, folks, with full debate analysis.